Hello everyone, and welcome on back to the channel. Welcome to another episode where we are going to be talking about and giving a little bit of a brief general overview of the new elite specializations to better inform you on what spec you want to play and give you an idea of what roles they can fill and some of their cool spells and skills that they have available. This of course is not going to be super detailed in terms of comparing and contrasting numbers and all that stuff, because these can change at any time. This is instead going to be a summary on the current profession mechanics, the utility skills, and the traits that you have available to play around with. Let's begin talking about the new profession mechanic for the Ritualist. Of course, you have access to the Ritualist Shroud. Assume the form of a Ritualist and gain new skills, turning your life force into health. Assuming the form of the Ritualist Shroud, you gain access to your new auto attack, which is Essence Blast. This deals damage, but will deal additional damage per spirit summoned. 15%, in fact. That is quite a large number. When you have all of your spirits up, that will be a 45% increase to your damage on your auto attack. Your very first spell is Anguish, which will mark a target and also deal 2,000 damage to them over 10 seconds, but it will also summon the Spirit of Anguish to perform a volley of magical bolts, dealing more damage against controlled enemies and also additional damage per condition on your foe. This has to have a target in order to be able to summon it. Your third ability is your Crowd Control Spirit. This will summon the Spirit of Wanderlust, deal an attack, and then the Spirit will be summoned, performing an attack and leaving a field in the area. We'll apply a plethora of conditions, which synergizes pretty well with Anguish. And then finally, your Preservation Spirit. This is your heal, but your initial spell summon will also apply Protection and Vigor. These can be summoned in a location for your Wanderlust. However, your Preservation will always be summoned right next to you. My one point of feedback is I still wish that the Preservation Spirit was functioning like Wanderlust, where you can select the area. But these spirits do not require a target to be summoned. They can be summoned at any time. And then finally, we have Summon Spirits. This will locate all of your currently existing spirits to a location, so this allows you to move them, as these are stationary spirits, and it will also command them to perform a unique spell. Your Anguish will perform another volley, dealing more damage. Your Wanderlust will throw out a projectile to daze enemies. And finally, your Preservation Spirit, as you might have been able to see, will summon a spell circle and a spell bubble to shield an area. We'll get these going just to show what some of the effects might look like. That is the area for the Wanderlust, but this, you'll see the Preservation creates the bubble, which will destroy incoming projectiles. These spirits you might see are lingering for a time after you leave Shroud. That is actually not the case all the time. That is one of the Grandmaster traits that I am taking, which we can show off in a little bit. Ritualists gain access to weapon spells. Your healing ability is Resilient Weapon, which will reduce your damage by 10%. If you're below 50% health, this damage reduction is increased to 20%. The healing is a channeled heal over time, and your healing will also be increased if you are below 50% health. This spell is granted to your allies at a reduced duration, so allies get it for 3 seconds, you get it for 6 seconds. Your first utility skill that we'll talk about is Splinter Weapon. This is a damaging weapon spell. Your strikes will trigger an additional strike on nearby enemies, and allies will receive fewer stacks of this buff. The next is Weapon of Remedy. Periodically remove conditions, healing for each condition removed. Grant this to nearby allies for a reduced duration. This is not only a healing ability for yourself, but also your allies. So this is where you can kind of see the damaging focus of Ritualist, but also it has a slight healing and support focus as well. Also, all these have their own spell symbols and these orbs that are summoned next to your characters. Nightmare Weapon, your strikes steal life from enemies and inflict vulnerability. Grant fewer stacks of this to nearby allies. Not only is this additional damage, but it's also healing for you and your allies are also applying vulnerability. Nightmare Weapon is an extremely strong spell to use. I think maybe even more so than Splinter Weapon, but granted, Splinter Weapon is AoE, Nightmare Weapon is not an AoE burst of damage to your enemies. And then finally, we have another supportive option, which is Weapon of Warding. This will block attacks, but you'll also gain protection when the last stack is removed. You'll grant fewer stacks of this to nearby allies. So allies will gain less of the blocks, however, they still get them, which is quite interesting and nice. And you even have this cool bubble effect, which is very bespoke to the Ritualist. I really like the effect of this, and I think is a very strong supportive tool for healing Ritualists. And finally, we have the Elite, which is Zinray's weapon. This is a little bit more complex in its design. I guess to look at it bluntly and flatly, it's a retaliation ability. So when you take damage over a percentage of your maximum health, you'll heal for the difference, and then you'll strike your foe with lifesteal. You'll grant fewer stacks of this to nearby allies and break them out of stuns as well. So for yourself, you'll gain 2 stacks of this, so this can happen twice. For your allies, it only happens once. But if you are struck by an attack that takes 15% of your health, you will retaliate by healing for it, and you will deal damage to that foe. Right now it's 2,000, and you'll also heal for a good amount. This effect is a little bit bigger to show off the interest and the importance of the elite skill. And it will also break out of stuns, which is really cool. It's nice to have a stun break on your elite skill. Now let's talk about the traits that you can find for the Ritualist. We'll talk about the minor traits first as a little bit of a summary or a ground level for the themes of this elite specialization. Ritualist, of course, gives you, or spawning power, gives you access to the Ritualist Shroud and allows you to train for your weapon spells. And then you have Boon of Creation. You'll gain concentration, as Ritualist is not only damage focused in terms of a selfish means, but you can play by applying boons and additional effects to your allies, so concentration is very important. But you'll also gain life force whenever you summon a creature, and a creature is a catch-all term for spirits and minions. Next, we have Charged Souls. You'll gain access to spirit innervation skills, allowing you to channel energy to your spirits for an additional effect. Additionally, gain life force when you use an innervate skill. Now this I wanted to talk about now because you might have noticed the F2, F3, and F4 abilities. These are abilities that you can pop whenever you have your spirits summoned. So let's summon Preservation. While this is up, you are able to channel Innervate Preservation, which causes it to explode and grant boons to allies around you. I say explode, but it doesn't actually destroy them. In the beta, it used to, but they decided that it's not really in line with the Ritualist's themes to have them destroy their spirits. So the spirits will continue to linger, dealing out their auto attacks and whatnot, but you have a little bit more to it. You don't have to sacrifice anything. So in terms of Anguish, this will explode, dealing damage to enemies around them, and also granting Might and Fury to allies. Wanderlust will cast a spell to deal fear to enemies around the spirit, and Innervate Preservation, as we saw, will grant boons to allies around the spirit. I do wish that the supportive features had a little bit larger of a radius, only because the spirits are so stationary and you don't have too much control over them unless you take certain traits, which we'll talk about next. Let's talk about the first column of minor traits. We have our adept traits. We have Wandering Spirits. Spirits teleport to you before they perform their auto attack. We'll show it off here down on more flat terrain. So it'll use its attack, but then every time that it is going to do its auto attack, it will teleport to you. And this is nice if you really want your spirits to be by you, especially if you're using your innervate abilities to deal damage and apply boons or cast your fears. This is actually a very useful trait if you are more of an innervation ritualist. Next, we have the first of a few support options and healing options. We have Spirit's Gift. Heal nearby allies when you summon a creature, both spirits and minions. So this is a trait you're going to want to take if you are going to be playing a healing ritualist. This is just a good heal. And then next we have the damage version of this trait, which is Explosive Growth. When you summon a creature, deal damage to enemies around that creature. So damage, but it also will give you a passive buff. Explosive Growth gives you 10% increased damage, which you can stack up to 20 seconds. Next column, we have the Master tier. First, we have Spirit's Remedy. Remove conditions from nearby allies when you summon a creature. This is an additional support option if you would like to have some Condi cleanse. Maybe you'll take Spirit's Gift as a healer and then also choose for Spirit's Remedy if you are encountering a lot of conditions on your end. Next, we have a very strong and kind of defining trait if you are playing a healer in particular. Empowering Spirits will grant boons to nearby allies when you summon a spirit. Each of the spirits will provide a unique boon. So your damaging spirit, Anguish, will provide might, wanderlust, fury, and preservation will grant resolution. However, as a catch-all, all of your spirits will grant quickness to allies around you. This is your quickness defining trait. And then finally for this tier, we have Spirit Strength. Your summoned creatures deal more damage and their healing is increased as well. So one thing to note about the healing, Preservation, actually whenever it attacks using its auto attack, it will also heal allies around you. So Preservation has its on-demand heal, but having it up means that you have some passive regeneration going along with all of your spirit attacks. Also, this will increase the damage and effectiveness of your more damaging spirits with Anguish and Wanderlust. Now for the Grandmasters, we have Wielder's Boon. Weapon spells, these are your utility skills, will remove conditions from affected allies. Affected allies will receive the full benefit of weapon spells. So no longer are they restricted to having reduced duration. They instead will always get the biggest bang out of these abilities. So your allies will be healing for 6 seconds and also have reduced damage for 6 seconds. They'll gain the full stack of the weapon abilities for all of your damaging stuff. They'll have the full duration on all of your supportive effects, and especially so for your elite skills in Ray's weapon. Next up, we have Lingering Spirits. Now, this is the most important trait that I think all ritualists are really going to take, so much so that I think that they should probably just bake it into the core of the ritualist in terms of the Lingering Spirits. You might have noticed that my spirits, when I'm outside of Shroud, continue to linger. If you don't take Lingering Spirits and you summon a spirit, and you leave the Shroud, it will also go away. If you take the Grandmaster Lingering Spirits, that will not be the case. The spirits will linger based off of the amount of life force that you have when you leave the Shroud. And so for brackets and intervals of your life force, every 3% of your life force will have 3 seconds of duration for your spirit to linger. So if you leave your Shroud at very low life force pools, the spirits will not linger as long. But if you're able to build up your life force while you're in Shroud and you leave it, your spirits will linger for a very long time. I think it's up to about 20-25 seconds. You also gain passive bonuses for summoning these spirits. Lingering Spirits will give you a 15% damage buff for your Anguish. Your Wanderlust will give you a 50% increased movement speed, which is incredibly strong. And your Preservation will increase your healing to others and your allies by 20%. I think Lingering Spirits is the best Grandmaster trait for Ritualists. But I would love to see Ritualists have their spirits linger for at least like 3 or 5 seconds, even if you're not taking this trait. I just think it's such a core part of Ritualists to have your spirits linger for some time. And finally, we have Soul Twisting. The first spirit skill you use when entering Ritualist Shroud recharges instantly. This is a really cool idea. I'm not sure if it is necessarily as competitive with the other Grandmasters. I think this could probably add, use something else or be baked into like Spirit Strength and then, a new Grandmaster kind of be erected in its place. But Soul Twisting can be very nice where you really need to burst damage or conversely burst healing. So this will allow you to get essentially double casts out of your really strong spirit initial spells. I will share the build that I guess I have been running around in Visions of Eternity with. I've been going a much more damage-focused Ritualist build, taking things like Explosive Growth, Spirit Strength, and Lingering Spirits, while of course taking Soul Reaping and Spite to further pad out that damage. One interesting thing with Soul Reaping is that the trait Eternal Life allows you to passively generate life force up to 66% of your life force threshold. And while you are in combat, this is very, very important so that you can actually basically be in Ritualist Shroud permanently for the most part. And I've really been focusing in on just getting the most out of my spirits, summoning them all very quickly, using my teleport to get into a good location, remembering to use my F2 Innervate, because not only does this give me boons, but it also deals damage. But then also for my utility skills, I've actually been using a minion summon. I've been taking bone minions because these minions will gain the benefits of your weapon spells. So things like Splinter Weapon and Nightmare Weapon will also pad out your damage in this situation. And sometimes you can kind of just let your minions do the brunt of the work. You see, those strikes are just so powerful with how much damage you're getting out of both your Splinter Weapon and your Nightmare Weapon. Additionally, when you're summoning these creatures, you're getting the benefit of explosive growth. You can explode your bone minions as well, which gives you additional life force and also a packet of damage when they explode, which then causes it to go on cooldown in 15 seconds. It's a fairly short cooldown, but then you're able to resummon it. It's another option for you to have alongside all of your spirit summons if you happen to be in a situation where you don't have that buff, but I imagine for the most part, you're always going to have your buff explosive growth up. But see here, I'm out of Shroud. I don't have anything summoned, but I do because I have bone minions. So I get to extend that buff a little bit more if I happen to be needing to go out of my Shroud. And if I want to, I can go back into my Shroud, resummon additional spirits to gain that buff, and just have all of my spirits pretty much do the work. And that, everyone, is the Ritualist Elite Specialization for Visions of Eternity. I hope you all enjoyed watching. Feel free to comment your reactions in regards to the Ritualist. How are you all enjoying this Elite Specialization? It's definitely one of my favorites. So like, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to purchase Visions of Eternity and help support the channel, I have links in the description. Thank you so very much. If you'd like to catch me over on Twitch, I stream quite frequently, especially on Fridays and the weekends. And I will see you all in the next Elite Specialization video. Take care, everyone.